They all escape.
Someone leaves.
I'll give it a couple minutes to let people sign on.
Hello.
Hi, we're just gonna wait a couple minutes and let people get settled.
Okay.
All right, I'll get started. My name is Meredith Dolan. I'm the chair of the Allegheny Young Republicans. We have some of our leadership team on this call. I'm sure more will be joining, but we are a grassroots organization in Allegheny County, and our membership is ages 13 to 40, and we work to get Republicans elected. Whether that is helping get out the vote efforts, mailings, and of course, doors and phones, our favorite. We are working to be a resource for young Republicans. So if you'd like to get involved, send us an email at AlleghenyYoungRepublicans@gmail.com, and we can add you to our newsletter. And we have, once everything is hopefully back to normal, we will resume all of our fun events and, networking opportunities. So look forward to, if you are not involved, having you join us. Special thanks to Trump Victory staff, Dallas McClintock. He covers this region, and so he was helpful in setting up the Zoom and just making sure that everybody had the information. And then, of course, considering all the social distancing, we want to find ways to stay connected and hear from candidates in our community. This is our third town hall. We had one with congressional candidate Sean Parnell and Attorney General candidate Heather Heidelbach, and both of those were really engaging. We had a lot of good questions, good discussion. I think this is a unique opportunity to be able to have conversations directly with the candidates. So look forward to tonight. The structure we plan to go through is I will go through the submitted questions and let each candidate respond. They will have some brief remarks, and please write your questions as we go in the chat. I want to make sure that we feel like this is a good conversation. So please stay engaged in the chat. And then in order to be able to hear the questions and the candidate responses, we'll be muting all the participants so we don't have any sound feedback or anything. So I will introduce our two candidates for tonight. Luke Negron is running for Congressional seat 18, and he is the only Republican candidate on the ballot. He is a Grove City graduate and joined the U.S. Air Force, where he flew dozens of combat missions. He is passionate about the community and grassroots politics. He's been involved with the Republican Leadership Initiative, Rick Santorum's Patriot Voices, Samaritan's Purse, the Pittsburgh Project, and City Lights Ministries. So Luke, he is great young Republican that we've had join in our county, and has been a real leader with a lot of new ideas, new grassroots. So it's been a real pleasure having him kind of join the county's forces. So Luke, if you want to say a couple words.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. As Meredith said, my name is Luke Negron, and I am here with my team with one goal in mind, and that is come November, we want to throw a retirement party for incumbent Mike Doyle, who has been around for 25, going on 26 years, about 40 years in politics, 25 years as a congressional rep. Most of the citizenry of the Pittsburgh region do not know his name. They do not know what he's passionate about or what he has done for them. And then it doesn't help that District 18 was recently redrawn to include the South Hills, which includes a lot of people who never voted for him. So now they kind of inherited a congressman who has been inactive for many years on end now. and who they never have directly supported, voted for, or monetarily speaking. So what we're looking to do is reset, redeem, and reclaim politics. That's my campaign slogan, but also those words are what we came to because they have a lot of meaning behind them. So to reset expectations that we have for local leaders, we don't like the term politician because it's become very tainted. Politician is really an insult. It's kind of like a curse word today. We try to go for being statesmen and stateswomen in my team and with my campaign committee. And then to redeem is really just to bring American leadership back to its roots, back to what it was meant to be. You know, the U.S. House used to be called the People's House because it was meant to be citizen leaders who were representative of the citizenry who they grew up alongside, who they worked alongside. We no longer see that. And you need to look no further than incumbent Mike Doyle for a 25-year career politician, elitist, Washington insider, who is out of touch because he doesn't need to be in touch with you, the citizens of the region, anymore. He can hold on to his power and protect it, and we think that's wrong. And then to reclaim politics, the last word of that 3-word slogan there is simply to reclaim politics of the people, by the people, for the people. So that's the movement of Negron 2020. We're so happy to be here and talk to you guys, take some of your questions, and get to know you guys. And I'll give it back to Meredith here.
Thanks, Luke. I'm sorry, I think I said your last name wrong.
Oh, that's fine.
Our next candidate is AJ Doyle. He has served on Brentwood Borough Council since 2015, and he is currently the council vice president and chairman of the Public Safety Committee. He has been a lifelong volunteer. He served the Brentwood community as a coach and member of the Brentwood Athletic Association. He's also a member of the Brentwood Park Initiative and vice chair of the Brentwood 4th of July Committee. He's also an Army veteran who served in the military intelligence as a Morse intercept operator and is currently a systems engineer in the aerospace and defense industry. He lives in Brentwood, where he raised his children, Kelsey and Jacob, and he's running for state rep in the 36th district because he believes that a conservative with an open mind and bipartisan approach is what is needed to help the Commonwealth stay successful. So take it away, AJ.
Thank you, Meredith. And as Meredith said, you know, I am the vice president of Brentwood Borough Council. I've been on council since 2015, and I had a career in volunteerism, I guess, is really what led to running for council, and just kind of naturally evolved to that. And Harry Reedshaw has been kind of the opposite of Mike Doyle. He's also been in 26 years in the State House of Representatives, but he's been very effective. And he has been very effective because as a Democrat, he's been a very conservative Democrat, but he's always had that approach that good government is much more important than good politics. Good politics is great for this time of year, right? When we're campaigning, we want good politics. We want to be able to give our stump speech. We want to really energize our base. But when we get down to it, we win those elections and we get to work. If we are not able to work across the aisle or bring others to our side, then we're only effective in the next campaign cycle, right? We need to run on our results. And we've done a lot in Brentwood, reaching over to the other side. I am the only Republican on Brentwood Borough Council. We've been able to be very fiscally conservative. It's been a common sense approach that is a lot of good planning, a lot of fiscal conservancy, being responsible and being good stewards of the people's money. And it's been very effective here at the local level. We'd like to take that approach to the state level. We're running over an open seat. Representative Reedshaw is retiring, and I am the only Republican running. There is a very crowded field over on the other side. Several extreme left Democrats that are running, and they really want to pull our district more in lockstep with the city of Pittsburgh, and we don't want to see that happen. So that is, in a nutshell, that's why we are passionately running for the 36th district in PA for the House that encompasses Brentwood, North Baldwin, parts of the city, including Carrick, Overbrook, the Southside Slopes, some of Mount Washington, and Brookline.
Awesome.
As well as Mount Oliver's in there, but
yeah. All right. Well, we had a couple different versions of this, so I'm just condensing it into one question. But we'll start it off with, COVID-19. So would like to hear from both of you, and we're going to start with Luke first, if we have a question for both candidates, and then AJ will then respond. So our question is, what are your positions on Governor Wolf's response to COVID-19?
Yeah. Okay. So this is something that I've been updating my social media about a lot, specifically Twitter and Instagram, because as COVID-19 develops, we see different leaders reacting in various ways. And because COVID-19 is really an unprecedented situation and an unknown illness, we have everybody kind of learning on their feet, some better than others. So I think we've seen a lot of local leaders, mayors, reps, governors, doing some things that come awfully close to massive oversteps in power, massive power grabs, and some unconstitutional moves. So I am not a big fan of mandated lock-ins or quarantine periods. I am not a big fan of you being told that you're not allowed to drive your personal vehicle, that you're not allowed to go out on a jog or a hike by yourself, to paddleboard. These are all things that we see happening in Pennsylvania and around the country. And Tom Wolf has really partaken in this with some of the mandatory shutdowns of local businesses and making local businesses suffer because of that. And then also, making mandatory lock-ins happen. So I do not support that. I do support a suggested messaging from the state telling people what the risk is, and then allowing us as free citizens of the United States to decide if we're going to go out and shop, if we're going to go out and jog or hike. I think that's how the United States was meant to work. But Tom Wolf also released a path forward about 4 hours ago, earlier today, and I want to read off some notes here. So something I support is that he pushed forward an idea to suspend student loan payments. And I support that, because right now we've got a lot of students who are working hard to make their loan payments, and now their jobs are gone, at least temporarily. So they should not have to pay those loans right now. I think that as the economy comes back, those loan payments can justifiably kick back in. Something I don't like is that he paid lip service to two areas that he really didn't take any action on. So first, business relief. So of course, there were mandatory business shutdowns, and he kind of said in his release that he wanted to look into monetary relief for local small businesses, but he didn't really offer a path forward there. And then he also didn't give any insight, any end in sight for the mandatory quarantine that we've all kind of been experiencing together as a nation. So I don't like those two things. And then the last point that one of my campaign team members sent me, which I thought was kind of cool, is Tom Wolf's idea here. His slogan for reopening PA is relieve handling of Pennsylvania in this time.
Muted there. So I don't know if you want to say the last kind of remark that you were on, because I think we were accidentally all muted.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I was just saying, so Tom Wolf's slogan for his reopening of PA looking forward is relief, reopen, and recover. And one of my campaign team members shot me a message and said, it seems like someone's copying our reset, redeem, and reclaim. You know, the 3 R's are a little bit similar there, but we can deal with that. That's fine. And that's really my summary of Tom Wolf's job dealing with PA in this time of crisis.
Thank you, Luke. AJ?
Well, I agree with Luke in some of the actions that the governor's taken have overstepped personal liberties, and we are in unprecedented territory, and whether it's been purposeful or accidental, there's a fine line that we have to cross. And tyranny in the name of public safety is still tyranny, right? That is something that I think that if they would be as thoughtful as they seem to be in their approach to reopen as they were to close down, although, you know, Tom Wolf did take criticism for his idea of shutting down the government or the state county by county and kind of hitting those hot spots where you're seeing a lot, you have a more dense population, and we're kind of going that way. But I feel that even though we may have statewide regulations when it comes to reopening, we're still going to be dependent on those hottest counties, those hottest areas where we have the most cases of COVID-19. And I just got the feeling I listened, and I really wanted to do my due diligence with the governor this afternoon when he presented his plan. I heard a list of guidelines and a list of talking points. One of the first things that kind of stuck with me is that he said, we want to make sure that we're doing this with data and we're not guided by emotions, or we're not using emotions. He then went on an emotional rant for the next 25 minutes, talking about things that he felt. I feel this, you know, he brought up things like a living wage, and he brought up things like access to, everybody should have quality access to medicine. And it looks like some of the things that we'll see them put into legislation to maybe relax some of these requirements. Our small businesses are hurting. I don't make much as a Brentwood Borough Councilman, but every penny that I've made during this shutdown, I have pushed away and been donating to small business, because our businesses are our backbone, and they're hurting. We have to support them. We have to make sure that they can withstand this, so we have places to go when we're allowed to go.
Great. Our next question is for both of you. And so what topics and issues do you believe are important to Western PA families? We'll start with Luke.
Awesome. One of the biggest topics that my candidacy represents and wants to bring forward is building a relationship between your local rep and the local citizenry. So this is something that we really haven't seen happening around the country, and specifically here in Pittsburgh. Again, when we come back to the incumbent who's been in power for 25, going on 26 years, when no one knows what that incumbent who's been around for a quarter of a century is passionate about, when no one knows that incumbent's name, when no one knows something that he's done for them, you've got a real problem if you've been around for 25 years and that's your track record. So there needs to be a relationship and a sense of transparency and intentional interaction between your local representative and you as a citizen. Someone who we see out of Texas who does this very well is another young leader, Dan Crenshaw, who frequently, comes out of a vote and he hops on Facebook Live, or he gets onto the news and does a quick interview, and he lets his citizenry know, here's how I voted, here's why I voted how I voted, and here's how it is going to affect you as American citizens. These ideas sound amazing. Imagine knowing what your representative in DC is actually up to, but they shouldn't be amazing. This should be standard. This should be par for the course. So that's really less of a policy position and more of a conduct position that I think we as citizens need to demand from our localized leaders. Then beyond that, some things that I'm really big on too for the Pittsburgh region. Number one, defense of our jobs, specifically energy jobs, because I'm a big believer in American energy independence. And we have some great unions. We have some great workers in the Pittsburgh region who create parts and supplies for energy production jobs. And this is something that Bill Peduto is against. This is something that Bernie Sanders is against, and that Joe Biden is also against. So those are big problems. We need to defend those jobs, and we need to defend the families who rely on those jobs. The second thing would be drug addiction and sentencing reform. So most of us, sadly today in 2020, have a friend or family member who has somehow suffered due to addiction, whether it's losing someone from drug addiction or they themselves have been addicted to drugs. And these could be street drugs, or they could be medical drugs that are causing these terrible things to happen in our families and our friends groups. So we need to focus more on drug reform and on some sentencing reform to try and build these members back into society, nonviolent drug abusers, bring them back build them up as productive members of society, and save our families and our friends.
Thanks, Luke. AJ?
So in the 36th district, you know, we have part of the city of Pittsburgh here, and a lot of those issues that Luke talks about, we have those same issues locally here, and people really do want to hear from their representatives. They want to know that their representatives are present. They want to know that they are actually out doing something and not trying to fly under the radar to cash in on a pension or be wooed by lobbyists. You know, that's something that career politicians will do. I don't like what Mike Doyle's done. You know, I have never been a fan of Mike Doyle. Sometimes it's rough because anytime I am talking politically or introducing myself, oh, Doyle, huh, Mike Doyle. I have a habit of calling him Uncle Mike. He really doesn't like that when we're in public settings, but that's usually the only time I can get a response out of him. But I started something back in 2015 when I became a member of Brentwood Borough Council that I really thought just made sense, and it turned out nobody else was doing it. And I called a coffee with a councilman, and basically what I did was once a month, usually between our agenda meeting and our regular council meeting, I would set up a meeting at a small business. I started it at Crazy Mocha, called it Coffee with Councilman because it just had a ring to it. Basically what we do, come on up, let's just sit, let's have a cup of coffee, and let's do what we're doing tonight. Let's just have an informal chat. I'll tell you what we did this month, what it means to you, why we voted this way, and what we're looking at for the next month, and to get people to come up and talk, because we get very few people. We have more people in here tonight than I've ever had at a council meeting. People don't want to come up to a public setting. They feel uncomfortable speaking before council, before an audience. And whenever you can get them one-on-one or in a small group, they're more willing to come and be honest and frank with you. And if they have issues, it's easy to resolve. I think the first meeting I had, 4 people had issues. I sent 3 text messages. All 4 of those that you'd have thought I cured COVID-19. The result that I got, or the reaction I got for doing those small things, and I wasn't doing anything earth-shattering. I mean, it's something that's been going on forever, and I don't know why locally it hadn't been done, because like you say, people want to know what their representatives are doing. They want to know their representatives have their best interests. You know, we want safe and clean neighborhoods. We are 15210 is within the 36th district and the 18th district. That has been the hardest hit in this area by the opioid epidemic. The numbers are coming back up. We're not having as many overdose deaths as we have in the last few years, 2016, 2017, 2018, when it was really the big topic. Not to say that there still aren't, and that it still is not a topic. We've tried in Brentwood Borough to emulate what they've done over in Bensalem. And I've worked with our chief to introduce Brentwood Police Aiding and Recovery, where we can take addicts or someone that has a problem. They recognize that they need help. They may not know how to get it. They may not be able to get it. If they come to the police and turn everything in, come clean, hey, I need help. I recognize I have a problem. We will work to get them help and get them placed into a rehab. Now, the catch to that is if you do have warrants, anything criminal activity, you would have to serve that. So it's something that we've been working on. We're trying to pick up steam with it. We've run into just a few issues with transportation really being our main issue there, and also with jobs and energy and union jobs. The union is, the trades are the backbone. They are the backbone of our area. Really, the construction trades, the carpenters, the steel workers, they're what literally and figuratively built this region. And we have to have their best interests. The Democrats and their agendas that seem to be ever changing are really getting away from those jobs. They're getting away from those values and what they need. You know, they're pushing towards this green deal, the green infrastructure, which is leaving our region behind, because we are, if you take us out of the United States, we have the third largest oil and natural gas reserves in the world, not just in the US. You take our area here and it's the third largest in the world. And we need to harness that power and start to realize some of the things. We talk about the economic boom, and this is my last point, I promise. We talk about the economic boom that we're seeing all over the country, right? Of course, before all of these government shutdowns, we weren't realizing what other states had been seeing, because we're number one in gas tax. We have the most liberal governor in the United States. I was flabbergasted last night. I was thinking, and I was listening to something Gavin Newsom, of all people, was saying. I said, you know what? I really wish our governor were as conservative as Gavin. Honestly, and I think that having a good conservative set of leaders in Harrisburg is the only thing that keeps us from falling into total disrepair because of Tom Wolf's leadership.
All right. Next question is kind of a two-part question. This will be more focused on campaign, and then we'll switch back to the issues. But the first part is, how has your campaign adapted to contactless voter engagement? And then kind of the second part to that was, both of you are running in historically Democrat districts. So what's your plan to turn these districts red come November? So I think, first part, kind of how have you been adapting to this unique situation that we're in? And then what is kind of your general, get out the vote or plan for getting, some of these, moderate voters or, traditionally Democrat areas?
Awesome. So first, to talk a little bit about campaigning during this time of crisis in a way that you have to do electronically because you can't be there physically. I actually think it's something that levels the playing field from a strategic standpoint. And of course, we want to see businesses back up. We want to see individuals staying healthy. But from a political strategy standpoint, I think that we actually have a great open door here to leverage some of what my candidacy and my team are pretty skilled in. And I'm sure for AJ as well, what he's more familiar with, which is online marketing, social media marketing, reaching people through town halls like this, reaching people through paid ads on Facebook or Google, and then also using some strategies for streaming, whether it's advertising through Netflix and Hulu. These are all things that we can do very, very cheap and very effectively to targeted demographics. So if we want to, communicate to gun owners who like to hunt and vote Republican, we can target that demographic using electronic marketing. So this is something that has really come into the limelight here amid the COVID crisis. And it's something that my team and I were always planning to leverage heavily because it's the future way to reach people. Of course, you'll never entirely replace good old face-to-face interaction. But in this time when it's all we have, I think it's a strength that we have that we can play to. And it's a leveled playing field because now some of these people who have a lot more money than us and a lot more name recognition built up over 25 years, like Mike Doyle, he can't throw his big events in person. He can't have big canvassing efforts. He can't have big fundraising efforts. Why? Because it's literally illegal right now. So he has to bring his efforts online. And that is somewhere where I think we can compete a lot easier. So we're trying to leverage this the best we can, and we see some real opportunities here. And then speaking to how to flip this district, how to make Pittsburgh a red city. Look, I've been stationed right outside of Los Angeles. I've seen those people. Pittsburgh is a major American city, but it's not a radical American city like Los Angeles is. There's quite a contrast there. Pittsburgh is a working class city where you have a lot of union, light blue Democrat voters, blue dogs, who just want to go to work and provide for their families and be left alone when it comes to politics. And we can give them that. As far as communicating with those are people we can talk to all day long. So I think that we actually have a very deceptive district from the numbers. Right now, the voter index, which basically is based on the national average of voting Republican to Democrat, is a D+13 district. So to give everyone here just a little education, a +20 district is considered unflippable. So +20 in the R's is somewhere in Texas. +20 in the D's is Los Angeles, California, right? Never gonna flip, never gonna change. D+13 is an uphill battle, but it's in play. And I think that it's even more in play than it seems right now, because a lot of those Democrats are not radical Democrats. They're centrists. And when I was around door knocking for our nomination petition period, almost every day I would talk to a Democrat who said a story something like, you know what, I'm a lifelong Democrat. My dad was a Democrat. I'm a union guy. And then they'd kind of lean in and like their voice would get low and they'd be like, but I'm voting for Trump because he's done some great things. And that's the type of Democrat that makes up Pittsburgh. There's a lot of people here who they're not sold out to the radical left. And the last thing I'll say here is that I think we need to make a stark line of distinction between Democrat and leftist. So there are Democrats who are very good, honest, hardworking people. They were raised Democrat, their parents were Democrat, whatever the reason may be. But they are not radical leftists. Leftists are the people who want to silence the opposition. Leftists are the people who want to bring socialism and communism to American shores. So we need to separate the Democrats from the radical leftists, and the Democrats we can talk to all day, especially Pittsburgh Democrats. We welcome them with open arms, and we look forward to working with them here.
Great. AJ?
Right. It has been a very interesting time, not being able to do the in-person or face-to-face. You get that contact, do a lot of cold calling, and my experience has been hit or miss. There are people that are quite open to talking. They're thankful to have another voice, just someone else to converse with because they've been so isolated. But then you have people that are absolutely horrified at the idea that you're trying to talk politics at a time like this. So it's interesting, and you kind of have to tailor the approach. But it does when you have the ability to use online marketing and you have the ability to stretch your dollar, because a lot of people didn't even hit the ground fundraising yet at this point. Yeah, I was fortunate to have a few $1,000s in my campaign fund before this happened, because that's the last thing people are thinking about right now is writing a check to a politician. I've been to my post office box. I think if we go to the grocery store, I'll sneak over and run in and grab stuff out of the post office box. But I haven't received a check in 2 months, probably since the end of February. So that's something that has really changed. Online donations to the campaign, they've dried up. So you've really got to kind of take a DIY approach or stretch every dollar that you have. And as far as flipping the district, I live in an area that's 3-to-1 Democrat right now. And I was appointed to council in 2015 in the middle of my campaign. I kind of got plucked out and appointed as there was one of our council members stepped down. So I continued the campaign, and I actually lost that election by 27 votes. And that night I kind of had my supporters and the people that were working the polls for me. We were at the pizza place having pizza, and we're cleaning up, and Charlie Johnson, who was the former president of Brentwood Borough Council and had just stepped away the year prior, said, you know, the only way you're going to win an election in Brentwood is to register as a Democrat. And I said, with all due respect, I'm going to win as a Republican or I'm going to lose as a Republican. The following election in 2017, I was the top vote getter in the borough. Nobody got more votes than I did as a Republican because I went out. I had feet on the ground. I hit the pavement. I did things like coffee with a councilman. I went out and talked to people. I was present. I was available. And people really respond to that. And that's what people want to see. They want to see someone who's going to work for them and not just show up and pretend like they care once every other year or every 4 years.
Alrighty, next question is going to come from the chat. So please continue to put your questions in the chat because we'll go back and forth. This one's for both candidates. What committees would each of you like to sit on if you were elected to Congress or the state legislature? I like this question a lot.
All right, so the two that stand out to me are budgeting and Homeland Security. And that is because those are two areas where I have a great deal of passion involved with the topics and where I think we can do a lot of good to protect Americans and to save Americans money. So in budgeting, I think it is quite inexcusable that our budget almost always goes over the limit, that we have a rising national debt, an unbalanced budget. And I think that we need some level-headed, consistent conservatives in there to insist that we balance our budget. Because what happens to you or me as citizens, as voters, if we essentially don't balance our own yearly budget and we don't file our taxes, or we do something wrong with the IRS with our tax filing? Well, we get fined or we go to prison. What happens to the government if they don't balance their budget? They print more money, they borrow more money, or they take more money from our taxes. So I think there's a real problem there. There's a real bad precedent being set. And so we need some good people in there to try and make necessary changes. And then because of my experience with national security, both in studies, I studied it in college, and I also, of course, am in the Air Force. That's something I'm passionate about, that I think we can do a lot of good in, not only in defending our citizenry, our civilians, but also in defending the men and women who defend us, right? My brothers and sisters in arms who are put in harm's way. I think that we can do a lot to stand up for them, to make sure that they're provided for medically, financially, and that they have the best equipment to continue being the finest fighting force that the earth has ever seen. And then there are some joint committees that I believe House members can work with Senate members, and they're similar to the budgeting topic, would be taxes. I think that we can do a lot to lower taxes and to incentivize business growth and prosperity for American citizens. So those are some of the biggest ones. I believe, though, that as a House member, you don't actually get to directly choose your committee. You can request, and then
you can submit your request.
That's right, and then you're chosen.
You are placed.
Yes. Exactly. So that would be my wish list, but I couldn't come close to promising any committees there. So that's my answer.
Awesome, AJ.
So mine follow a lot of the same lines. I would like to be on the Veterans Affairs Committee because, as a former military guy, I'm coming up on the age where a lot of my friends, a lot of the guys that I served with, are retiring. They're becoming, retired members. They've served 20 plus years and are moving into retirement. And as a veteran who's been through the VA health system with issues, I've seen the way that we're treated. I didn't get experience as much as some of our veterans have. I've heard the horror stories, and I lose sleep at night thinking of some of the things that the men and women that have defended us, that fought to defend us all these years, are going through in these facilities, and the way they're treated by us. It's irresponsible, and it is reprehensible, I think is the word that I'm looking for. And the other one that is not as sexy, maybe not as well known, is the local government committee. I am passionate about local government. I think that that's where it all starts. You know, we are front and center. We are right on the pulse. You know, we're in your neighborhoods, we're on your block, and it starts outward from there. And getting people introduced and interested in this is the way that we can have an upward trend. You know, you may start out as a local councilman or a local committeeman, and then you move into local council, maybe move into state, you move into federal. So you don't necessarily have career politicians, but you have people that are moving progressively up the ladder and then moving out, so that you have someone that understands at a federal level. They understand what it's like to be a local government official. They understand what it's like to have someone stop you in the middle of Giant Eagle and talk to you for 45 minutes because they have an issue. You know, those are the things. That's the reality of being a local official and being in this. You know, you can't really hide. So that's something that I'm very passionate about, and giving them the tools to be successful, I think, and giving them the interest to stay in there and keep doing it, because what you're doing is the right thing. You're doing it for the right reasons, and it's the right thing.
Awesome.
Those are the two that come to mind. Liquor control, maybe just so I can destroy it from the inside.
Yeah. Keeping with kind of our issue focused on the official side, can you both list what are your 3 most important issues? And then maybe it could be one of the 3, but if there's an issue in there that is, you know, kind of a not very discussed issue, or an uncommon, you know, kind of pet issue that you guys have, I'd just be curious to know. So top 3, and then kind of one that is a unique issue that you're passionate about. Luke?
Yeah, easy. Term limits. I'm pro term limits. I am pro drug sentencing reform. So we kind of talked about for nonviolent drug offenders. I think that we do ourselves a great disservice by sending these people to prison as opposed to sending them to reform school. And AJ kind of spoke about that as well. Quick fun fact there on the drug and sentencing reform is that it's actually almost always cheaper and faster to send a person to reform than it is to send them to prison. So in America, we have the highest per capita prison population of any first world nation. I think that's a problem, and it's a problem that's made up of a lot of people who do belong there, right? Violent offenders. Of course, I support them being punished and incarcerated. But then a lot of nonviolent offenders who are busted with weed, which isn't even illegal in all states. So we've got some problems there. And who's paying for those people? You know, we are. Our tax dollars are paying for those prisoners. And I'm a big fan of what's called restorative justice. So it's really this idea that comes from my faith background as a Christian, which is, you know, if I wrong somebody or if I rip somebody off or if I'm a drug offender, I don't go to prison for it. I pay back what I took from someone else, right? So if I steal $10,000, I pay that money back. I don't go to prison, because me going to prison doesn't do any help to society. It doesn't help someone when I'm a nonviolent criminal who goes to prison. What does help is if I pay back the person who I wronged. So if I monetarily make compensation for the wrong there, I think that's part of the sentencing reform that I'd like to see. And we could spend a long time talking about that, but that's kind of the 50,000 foot view. So pro-life, pro-term limits, and pro-drug and sentencing reform. Pro-life is, you know, a simple one that doesn't really require much explanation. I believe that abortion is comparable only to slavery in the dark mark that it puts on our history as a nation. I believe it's wrong. I believe it is a convenience-based murder, and I'm always going to be vocal and outspoken and consistent about that. Then kind of my pet topic, I have a few of those. One is in speech giving, actually. I talked about this in an interview a little while ago. So something that troubled me ever since I was a child listening to politicians and leaders speak was finding out that the vast majority, the lion's share of these leaders have speechwriters who write their speeches for them. And very rarely does a politician or elected official actually write their own speech that they deliver to you. Now, I'm not against using notes here or there. You know, of course, we all need that. But what I don't like is that you don't know whether you're getting the genuine words of the individual who you elected, or whether you're getting words from some assistant who told them that, hey, these are great talking points that you want to talk on right now. I don't like that. And I think there's a big difference. We've come a far way from, the Gettysburg Address written by Abraham Lincoln on the train on the way to Gettysburg, to now we have people reading off of teleprompters. And to anyone listening to this, I would challenge you, go on YouTube and for instance, find a video of Mike Doyle where he doesn't sound like a robot running on low batteries reading off of a teleprompter, right? Find me a video where he actually seems like he's passionately speaking from the heart about a topic that he knows about. You won't find it because it's not there. And that's the case with many politicians. So that's really a problem that I see. And a way to right that ship, I think, is simply just have politicians as elected officials before giving a speech come out there and say either this speech written by me, this speech written by Luke Negron, or this speech written by John Doe, my assistant John Doe, and read by politician Luke Negron. That way we know when we're getting your words as a leader, and we know when we're getting someone else's words. So I think that's a nice little policy that I'd like to put forward. And it all comes back to just transparency and leadership.
All right.
To be fair to Congressman Doyle, he actually sounds like that all the time. Even if you ask him how his day was, that's just how he is. He might be the most boring person I've ever met. So my three biggest topics, public safety is a huge topic. I want people not just to feel safe. I don't like talking about how people feel. I don't want feelings and emotions. I like facts and examples. I want people to know they're safe. I want people to know that they can send their children to school safely. Their kids can walk. We're in a walking district, and hardly any of our students actually walk to school. They're all driven to school because everybody is terrified that if someone follows you down the aisle at Walmart, or if you go and try to pull this penny off of your door, you're going to be human trafficked. And I think that everybody's in such a frenzy that they need to know that they're safe. They need to know that they can rely on the safety of our public safety officials, and that we're providing for that safety. We want safe, clean neighborhoods that we can grow in as a community. That's the big thing. We have a transient population. There are several people that just kind of live somewhere. They're not setting down roots. They're there temporarily. So they have no real incentive in the game how their community is going to develop, what their community looks like, what they can do to help their community. And another hot point is jobs, our union jobs, protecting those jobs, protecting our energy jobs, protecting our infrastructure jobs, keeping those jobs, and supporting the families who earn a living from those jobs. And that falls into just the hardworking spirit of Western Pennsylvania, that blue collar lunchbox kind of throw on your hard hat and get the job done. I think local government, like I said, is another one of my passions, making sure that we are doing right by our residents and our residents have a voice. And one of my pet issue is within public safety, specifically with our first responders. We are facing a crisis not only across the state, but in America, where we do not have new volunteers coming in to become voluntary EMS or medics, firefighters. Volunteer firefighting, it's not going to be a thing soon. It's a huge crisis because of the I don't want to say the lack of interest, but we have to find a way to incentivize participation with your local volunteer fire department, because without that, again, we cannot guarantee safety. We cannot show people that they are they live in a reliably safe area, and that leads to not feeling safe. And again, I don't like to have people feel certain ways.
Yeah, I think that's a really important issue. One of the questions that was submitted in advance was for AJ, but both can answer. What would the first piece of legislation you would introduce upon being elected? So kind of piggybacking on like that specific issue, but it's always interesting to hear about, you know, something in the law that you'd like to change. So, Luke?
So mine would be term limits. My pledge is that in my first year as a member of the U.S. House, I will either pen and spearhead a policy movement for congressional term limits, or I will support someone else who has already begun that movement. If there's something that has already picked up steam, there's no need for me to compete with that. I would support them in that. So that's a very easy and short answer is first year, that's going to happen.
AJ?
Good answer. I would like to go a little locally, and I kind of spoke to this. I would like to see, especially with what we've seen here in the last month, I would like to do away with the PLCB, or at least the state-run stores. The state doesn't need to be in the business of retail sales. They don't. And the fact that with one remark, you can close every liquor store in the state, it's puzzling. But you know, beer distributors can stay open. Giant Eagle can still sell wine, though that's essential. Although I would argue, yeah, that is essential sometimes. But the fact that they scrambled to reopen online sales after they realized they're losing up to $65 million in revenue is unbelievable. I know that there have been attempts to privatize the liquor industry here in Pennsylvania in the past, and they failed. But that's something that I would like to introduce, or again, support or co-sponsor if that were introduced.
Great. We got a really good question. I think that's really applicable to kind of our young Republican population. But do either of you think that family values are currently in jeopardy? I think right now is a unique time to, you know, kind of step back and take a look at the, you know, bigger story that we are in with all of the COVID-19, and then just the direction of our, you know, federal government, you know, state government. And I think that's a good question. So, Luke?
Yes, absolutely. I could end the answer there with absolutely. They are in jeopardy. And I think I'll kind of dive a little bit deeper into it though here. So the importance of this is that family values are at the core of who we are as Americans and who we are as a nation, right? Because the way that you are raised and the community that you first come to know, which is your family, your parents, your siblings, and your close friends, those who are allowed to be close to you, that dictates a lot about who you are and about how you interact with people in the future, about how you demand respect and how you give respect, about how you value human life, about how you value liberty and personal rights and individual hopes and dreams that we all share as Americans. We want to be able to pursue those things with freedom and confidence. So of course, and those family values are under attack from multiple sources. So of course, from the media, I believe, whether that's the entertainment media or the news media, I think that we see a devaluing of the family structure. And that goes for women, it goes for men. I think that we see every core aspect of what makes a family being undercut and really cut off at the knees. And then it comes from our political leadership as well. We see politicians setting a really awful example, whether it's some politicians who don't seem to care to incentivize family growth. They'd rather push policy, which makes the government, which makes Uncle Sam, your parents, it makes Uncle Sam the person who provides the food on your table, the money in your wallet, and even who becomes kind of like your own personal adult who you go to when you need help, whether it's through a welfare system, through a centralized healthcare system, through government owning all of the liquor stores. I mean, we see the government really overstepping into our personal lives. And what that does is it takes away from the incentive for people to do responsible things like getting married, like raising kids together, like dedicating themselves to a job. You know, the most productive member of our society, at least when I was in college, this is a statistic I heard, is a middle-aged 30 to 35-year-old married male. The most dangerous member of our society is a slightly younger 20 to 30-year-old unmarried male. Why is that? Because the married male who's around the same age has the physical ability and the purpose to keep himself in line, to keep himself hardworking, to provide for those around him, to be a respectable member. The male who is not dedicated to anyone, who has no one to keep him in line, who has no incentive behind him, who has no hopes and dreams that he's working for, he becomes not only a negative drain on society, but a dangerous member of society, statistically, the most dangerous member of society. So as someone who falls in both of those age ranges, I care deeply about these issues. And I think we need to protect American families. And there are a lot of policies that apply to this situation, but that's my broad answer is absolutely they're under attack. And we need to show them some value and some regard.
Great. AJ?
Absolutely. I think that our family values are under attack every day. And just the idea of your family unit, whether it be a mother, father, children, father, father, children, mother, mother, children, it doesn't matter. Those are all valid families. Those values where you don't necessarily, it's okay to not have a complete family, or it's okay, you don't need your two parents. You're okay with just the one parent. The government will be there. The government will take care of you. They'll pick up the slack, and they almost incentivize where, you know, it would be worth more. I have a friend that says, you know, it would be easier for me to divorce my wife and then rent her my house through Section 8 and just live in the basement. He said, I would seriously, I would not have to struggle as much as I do right now.
Wow.
And this is coming from a guy, you know, he and his wife are both, you know, they're both employed full time. They have very good jobs, but they're taking a beating for trying to do the right thing. And when you destroy the family unit, you destroy your values, you destroy your principles, you destroy your morals. And that's when you're susceptible to do almost anything that is required of you, almost anything that's asked of you. I've heard so many people that say, oh, well, we'll just be quiet, and if we would just stop and do what we're told, we will get out of this situation a lot faster. If we just stop and listen and do what they're telling us to do, then the faster we can go back to being free. That might be one of the most ridiculous things that I've heard in a long time.
Yeah.
You know, the faster we stop and sit down and do exactly what we're told, the longer we're going to be sitting here doing exactly what we're told.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. A good closing question just came in on the chat. Super relevant to Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, both of your districts. How would you protect the Second Amendment?
All right, so when we come to the Second Amendment, first of all, I'm very pro-gun. You know, I've been in the military. I've been a competitive shooter. Fun fact about me, I was once ranked 36th in the nation through 4-H shooting for the .22 small bore rifle. I conceal carry. We need to protect this right and recognize that people who come against it are often emotionally hurt. They're scared, or they have personally had reason to be scared because they've seen things happen in the media. And whether it's a misrepresentation of crimes, whether it's actual crimes, that doesn't really matter. We need to come to these people who are emotionally hurt, and we need to respect them as individuals, but we need to make it clear that giving away our rights is not going to solve this issue. So a good way to do that is to have a level-headed conversation rather than an argument with these individuals. Because again, when we have the emotion of fear mixed in with our fellow American brothers and sisters, we need to show that we value them first rather than just hitting them over the head with an argument. So that's the first thing I'd say there. But we also need to talk about the fact that we already have background checks in place. When people say that they want background checks in place, what they're actually saying, that this is a very slick semantic move that the left loves to use, they actually want a gun registry. There's a big difference there. And I want everyone listening to keep this in mind next time they hear it. Ask the next person you hear who says, do you support background checks? Ask them if they are, number one, aware that we already have background checks. As someone who has purchased firearms, I know this is true. They have to call it in before they hand you that firearm. Number two, ask them if they mean a background check or a gun registry. Those are two very different things. A registry would be your local law enforcement or whoever holds the keys to power at the current time, knowing who you are, what guns you have, and depending on how the policy is passed, where you keep those guns and who owns it and who within your family has access to those guns. These are very different things that we need to talk about. And of course, I'm against a gun registry. I think it's unconstitutional. I think that you could certainly make the argument that we already have pushed some of our requirements on gun owners past what the Constitution had in mind. The last thing I'd say here is we just need people who are vocal, who speak out about this in favor of the facts, who refer to data, who talk about the lives that have been saved by gun owners, who talk about the fact that many of these gun crimes are crimes committed with illegal firearms, which tells us that they are already illegal. So if we pass greater restrictions, that's not necessarily going to take these guns away because they're already illegally owned. They're already off the record. So we need people who are going to talk about these things openly and who are going to show respect and value for the people who are scared and who have been lied to by the media who really loves to fearmonger and possibly on no issue more than this issue, than gun rights. The media loves to pump people full of fear and of misinformation. And then I guess the last thing I'll say here is I actually just posted a comment today of mine where I say that if you know nothing about the topic at hand, you probably shouldn't be the representative passing or penning policy about that topic. And this goes to guns. You've got representatives and an empty suit like Joe Biden saying things like that guns hold 100 magazines at a time and there's no reason for that. You've got people who don't know the difference between a bolt action and a semi-automatic weapon. These are things that show that you don't know the topic at hand, and yet you want to pass policy on it. That's a big problem. If you're going to pass policy about something, you need to show at least an entry-level knowledge on that topic. So that's kind of some of my rant. I could go on the Second Amendment, but those are some of my thoughts there.
Thanks, Luke. AJ?
AR-14s absolutely hold hundreds of magazines.
Exactly.
They do. Hundreds of magazines that hold like 50 clips each. This one's very easy. I will absolutely defend and support the Second Amendment until the day I stop breathing. I will not support any sort of red flag laws or any additional restrictions on owning or purchasing a firearm. Further, I will support preemption laws to stop these local laws like we have in the city of Pittsburgh, where they're trying to bypass the Second Amendment with a silly ordinance that will not hold up in court. It's showboating. It's pandering at its finest. And even further from that, I will not, and this is maybe an issue for a few different reasons, but I will not support a constitutional convention. There are so many people that want to do different. Let's go through term limits and let's do this and let's have a constitutional convention. Let's open up the Constitution, put this in. I absolutely will not support any attempt to open up the Constitution, because as soon as the Constitution is opened, the first thing to go will be your Second Amendment right. The next thing, once the Second Amendment right's gone, none of the other rights matter. So that's a non-starter. I am firm with that. I was shot as a teenager in an accident. I was almost killed. Good Friday, 29 years ago, 1991, was March 29th. A friend of mine, we were in my dad's game room, and he was checking out a Remington Fieldmaster 22 because it had a scope on it. I handed it to him, opened it up, cleared the weapon. There was a small, they talk about those 30-round magazines are dangerous. It was a 3-round magazine, Luke. You know, they will go flush with the weapon.
That's right.
Until it's in there. First thing he did when I handed him the weapon, close the chamber. There was a round still in that magazine. The bullet went into my fly. It went in my right thigh, missed my femoral artery by millimeters. I would have instantly bled out. I still have the pants. The kid who shot me is terrified, has never touched a gun, ever. He tells me that all the time, that he went through a lot of therapy. Finally got the help that he needed, but it took him a long time to come to terms with it. I have several guns. I respect the power of weapons. I respect our right to own those weapons, and I have raised my children around them to understand what happened, to me, and why you should not play around with these. They're tools. They're tools that we use to defend ourselves. They're tools we use to feed ourselves. They're not toys, and they are incredibly important to us as a people, and to maintain our rights and to maintain our freedom.
Wow, what a crazy story about that accident.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad it was mere millimeters, but
it was something that you know, it shakes you to your core, and you'd think telling that story that someone would be, you know, that would be coming from a gun control approach, but quite the opposite.
Alrighty, well, thank you everyone. We're going to go through closing remarks from Luke and AJ. So any last words, information about your campaign, how to get involved? Obviously, once things hopefully start to get back to normal, we're looking at May, hopefully, fingers crossed. You know, YRs, we're going to be the first people out there hitting doors and phones and, you know, tabling events and things like that. And so, you know, how can, you know, listeners get involved? Just more of what is on your schedule, you know, for the rest of the spring.
Yeah. Okay. So real briefly, something that my team and I are doing right now is putting together relief packets for local churches and communities for COVID-19. So some sanitary products, you know, hand sanitizer, gloves, cleaning services, or rather cleaning supplies, things like that. So if you want to donate, be part of handing those out, or if you have a church or a community who is in need of that, get in touch with my campaign. That brings me to my next point. Check out negron2020.com. That's Negron 2020.com. All of my social media is linked there, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. But I won't go through all of those handles. It's much easier. Just go to the website. There's also a donate tab there. As AJ said, we are all kind of running nationally on really a skeleton crew when it comes to budget. So any donation is appreciated. And something I think everyone should appreciate or should understand, from not only for my candidacy, but for everyone's, is that donations don't have to be large. There's actually a lot of value that just comes in the fact that you donated at all. So if you donate $5 to a campaign, well, what's actually more valuable than the $5 is the fact that now they can cite you as an other person who donated. So having a long list of donors is just as important as having a lot of money. So it's a show of support. And I know I speak for AJ and I when I say we always appreciate that. But even if you can't do that, you know, the support when it comes to time to vote, we are both, AJ and I, unopposed through the primaries, I believe. But when it comes time for November, show up. Word of mouth is the most potent thing that you can do. Talk to your friends, because if they're going to hear about me from me or hear about me from you, it's going to be a lot more potent when it comes from you, because you're someone they trust. You're someone that they know. I'm just guy who was asking for their vote. So that's really kind of my call to action there. And let's do this together. And we look forward to serving you guys.
Thanks, Luke.
Right on. I'm gonna make it easy. Doyle for PA. Doyle FORPA. That's my website, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Everything is Doyle for PA. Monetary, everyone's hurting right now. We can always use donations. I think one of the most important things that we could really use is your time. It might be the one thing that you can freely give of yourself right now. Spreading word of mouth. If you're able to phone bank, you're able to make some phone calls on our behalf and talk about voting, not only in the primary. Again, we are both running unopposed, but in November. And one of the things that I kind of checked, and I need to look this up because I heard this today, and it I'm not sure how true it is, but if you register to vote by mail in the primary, you must vote by mail in the general election. I'm not sure if anybody knows if that's the case.
PA GOP staffers on the call. Dallas, Ryan, anyone?
I thought I saw that on the application for a mail-in ballot.
Anybody? Dallas, Ryan, Trump staffers?
I mean, I'm going to.
We'll find out.
Yeah, I'm going to research that more and more as well. But I think, the fact that we have online voting, or online voting. Geez, oh man. The fact that we have, text Doyle to 33033, or is it 3203? But the fact that we have the mail-in voting is something that, our opponents are going to make use of it. We have to beat them at their own game. It's something that we have to embrace, whether we like it or not. It is now part of our election law, and we have to embrace it. We have to use it, and we can use it as a means to get more people registered. People that normally wouldn't get out to vote might get out and vote, and it could be a difference of 5 to 10 votes. Could be 5 to 10 votes.
All right, what was the question about mail-in ballots? I was muted and couldn't unmute myself.
The question now, I had read, and I think I saw it, maybe I was misunderstanding this, but if you register or apply to have a mail-in ballot for the primary, then you must vote with a mail-in ballot in November.
So that's not necessarily the case. So, I mean, just generally on the mail-in ballot process, there are a couple of ways that you can kind of go about it. One, I believe you can return the ballot and say that you don't want to vote by mail. But
right.
Two, you can go to a polling place and request a provisional ballot, which essentially is you have to do a lot of the verification information, like where you live, just kind of the stuff that you filled out when you registered to vote. And then you have to kind of go through all of that process, and then it adds an extra step of verification because they don't have you on the voter rolls for the place where you're going to vote, but you can still vote there provisionally.
Right. Well, and that's, I think that once you actually submit, I think it is, if you vote by mail in the primary, then you must vote by mail in the general. And again, that'll have to be researched. But like I said, the time that anyone can give, that's the most important thing that we have, and that's something that we don't. It's probably our most valuable asset. And right now, a lot of people have an abundance of time sitting around. So if you can help out, anything you can do at Doyle for PA, at Negron 2020,
Awesome.
we would appreciate any help we could get.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for participating, for the submitted questions, and for engaging in our chat. It's really great to have kind of a live conversation as we go through issues and questions. So look forward to some upcoming other virtual town halls that we will be hosted by YRs. But thank you, Luke. Thank you, AJ. We are, of course, here to help once we're able to now, but once we're able to get out and do what YRs do best, we are excited to help you out. So, alrighty. Have a good rest of your night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great Friday night.